Hello YouTube, it's me Vdeogamer, and today I'm going to be drawing Knuckles and Tails both in the same drawing. I'm not really sure how this is going to look yet. I've drawn Knuckles and Tails quite a lot of times before, so it's not going to be too hard for me to draw them. I've just got to decide what pose I'm going to put them in. So I'm just going to start a few sketches off here just to see what I want to do. Okay, so first things first, what I'm really going to start working on is Knuckles' face. Like all Sonic characters, he sort of has the goggle type eye appearance, but the only difference being that his eyes actually connect down to his face in the center. I guess that makes him look angrier, perhaps. Just come around and build the eyebrow up here. Then we got Knuckles' face right below that. You need to make sure that you have it sort of curved, so that way it makes it look like he's a little bit more angry. Knuckles is always angry for no apparent reason. We'll work on the eyes a little bit more. We're drawing in another oval and adding a glare to it. Now I've got to try and make his expression a little bit more angry. And do that by curving the eyes a little bit more. Sort of do need to bring up everything just a little bit, because his body's not very long. If we make it seem too long, it just looks weird. I'm going to shorten him up a little bit. For no apparent reason, his head looks so disconnected from his body. I'm having so much difficulty with this drawing. I guess that looks good enough. I'm going to outline the spikes of his hair a little bit more. Now working on Knuckles' hands. Sort of going to broaden the collar up of the glove a little bit. And we're sort of going to start off with a circle for his fist, but we're going to work into that. We got his thumb here coming around his glove. Then his pointed, super spiked knuckles. That gave him his name, I guess. And since this one's a little bit back farther behind, or in the distance, this one needs to be bigger. That looks better. We'll do practically the same thing for the other hand. As for Knuckles' lower body and shoes, we're just gonna work by making sure we got the legs the way we want them to be. We're gonna draw in the socks coming out of Knuckles' shoes. We're gonna do the outline of Knuckles' shoes first. They're very broad and sort of flat. And on top of them, they have this metal plate, I guess, which should be the buckle. And that goes nearly all the way across the shoe. And then from there, the yellow stripe just comes back down around that. And then we've got the sole of the shoe just wrapping around all of that. Yet at the same time on his buckle here, he has about 6 dots going across it I guess just sort of add some texture to it, some detail. We're going to put a few on that side. And even though I had such a difficult time drawing Knuckles, I would say that Knuckles came out pretty well. Now it's time to draw Tails. And I've sort of got to readjust his legs just a little bit, because I don't like how they are right now. Now for Tails' face, Tails is not going to be half as angry, probably not angry at all, as Knuckles was. And his eyes are sort of going to be shaped a little bit differently. His eyes are very rounded, and they're not connected to each other at all. And Tails' inner eye is going to be right there. Just like that. His nose is going to be right about here. And Tails' eyes almost seem sort of sad for some reason. Draw in the pupil here. Give it a small glare. I think I made that line a little bit too dark. And then for Tails' face, he doesn't really have skin, but just a bunch of fur coming up to his nose. And then going back down for his eyes here. Comes down around his eyes. And then just sort of comes out into 3 individual spikes back here. Actually 4. When I look at it. Mouth just comes back up like this. And then he's got a few spikes on the other side that we can kind of see. And his mouth is just smiling, I guess. Now for Tails' gigantic ears. Basically what you want to do is you want to draw a big rounded triangle coming off of his head. And then about following the same outline you used originally, just drawing another rounded triangle following that shape. And we're going to put in one more line going across to connect the ear there. Can't see the inside of the other ear because it's facing the other direction. But then we've got sort of what makes Tails look like Tails. These 3 spikes of hair here. Moving on down to Tails' body. Sort of going to have his arm bent here. We've got Tails' glove here, which sort of consists of 2 main parts. It's like the sleeve, which is cut off by a silver ring, and then the rest of the hand, which is going to be here. Drawing the hand, sort of some rectangles, and then slant them back. And then since the pinky's the one on the outside, sort of gotta show a little bit of that. Then we're gonna draw in the fur on Tails' body. It takes up the majority of his body, and it just spikes out about to the point where it touches his face here. You've got a little bit of room where it doesn't. Body is sort of weird because it's like a teardrop shape or something. I don't get it. But that's just Tails. We'll work on the other hand here. Now for Tails' legs, sort of got to make sure that we're drawing them in right. Want this leg back a little bit more. Then for the sock, we're going to do basically the same design we've been doing for the rest of them. That's just sort of having it overlap twice with these two lines here. And we're going to put a ring to separate that. And then the rest of his shoe comes down from there. Just because I need to make it seem like he's running a bit more. Then for Tails' shoe, it's pretty simple design. You've just got one line cutting it off from the red and the white part, and then you've got the sole coming around that. The thing you have to remember about Tails' shoes is that they're a little bit flatter, and they're not as long as most of the characters' shoes. They're still pretty long, but just not as long, I guess. So that means I need to shorten that up a bit. And for this shoe specifically, you can sort of see what's going on underneath of it just because of how it's tilted. Just add that in real quick. Okay, so now what I'm going to do for the drawing is I'm going to take a fine point Sharpie, an ultra fine point Sharpie, sorry about that. I'm going to outline all of the lines I want to keep in the drawing. That way I can get rid of all the smudged up, messy pencil underneath. And we'll just have a nice outline that won't erase whenever we're coloring. Good thing I didn't stop recording it. Okay, and the thing I forgot to add in on Tails was his actual tails. That kind of makes Tails who he is, so I need to add those in real quickly. They're just going to be sort of puffy, coming from the back. And it's hard to describe in words what the shape is. So it'd be best if you looked at a picture. They just come right out from behind him. We're gonna have one coming up behind his head here, and one just sort of going backwards. And then at the tips of the tails, you have this triangle pattern going across, I guess. It's not really a pattern because it's all different. That marks off the orange from the white. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an eraser and I'm going to get rid of all the underlying pencil underneath with the drawing. This is where you're going to start seeing it clean up a lot. There's certain places where it's not going to completely disappear, and that's because I didn't follow my own advice and just use sketch lines the first time. So I have all these dark marks that I can't get rid of. I'm going to begin coloring my characters. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a light color, whatever it may be. For Knuckles, it's going to be a light red at first. I'm going to make sure I'm coloring evenly. When I was younger, Knuckles actually used to be my favorite Sonic character just because of all the different colors he had on him. But then I saw Shadow, I'm like, wow, that guy's cool. Cooler than Knuckles. Leave a comment with who your favorite Sonic character is, or video game character for that matter. Pretty much we're going to do the same type of coloring for both Tails and Knuckles, just with all their colors. For the skin, I'm going to use a blend of several different colors. This color is like a pale flesh color at first, and I'm going to use a bit of a tan. Should make it a little bit better. Alright, so now we're ready to begin shading the colors on the characters. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose where the lighting source is. I think I'm going to have the lighting source up here to the top left somewhere. That means all the darker shadows are going to be to the bottom right. And you just got to take a darker color, just sort of shade to that direction. I'm sort of going to be coloring in the style that is found with the Sonic Adventure characters, just for their posters. That means we're going to have some very defined highlights with some very dark shadows. And these spikes back here aren't really going to have too many highlights on them. Maybe just a little bit. And you want to make sure that you're coloring very darkly, just to get a nice, smooth, even color for these characters. And now to wrap up the shading that we just did for Knuckles, we'll take an even darker color and give him another shadow. Pretty much we're just going to use that same technique for all the colors on our characters. And the same type of shading goes for Tails. It's going to be very direct shading, only a few highlights, getting as even of a color as possible. So now what I'm going to do for these characters is I'm just going to give them a little bit of a shadow beneath them. And where their feet actually touch the ground is where the shadow is going to be darkest. Then in the background, I'm just going to throw in a few colors to accentuate the characters, and also just to cover up the mess I made in the background. Here is my finished picture of Knuckles and Tails. I hope you guys like this drawing. It actually took a long time to make for no apparent reason, because I've drawn these characters plenty of times before. I guess the hardest part I had was just deciding what kind of pose I wanted the characters to be in. But I finally got it, and I really like how this drawing turned out. You guys should subscribe if you like the drawing, because I plan on doing lots more drawings of video game characters to come. And also, if you want to send me a request, just go to my channel, go down to the moderators module, type in your request of your favorite video game character, and it just might show up as a tutorial of its own someday. Thank you guys for watching this video, and until next time, keep on drawing.